Oh, okay. Close. Although it's stressful.
Nobody went over that. With the wrong one.
That's two T's.
No, we went over that in class.
And there's no S.
Kate, this homework?
I know there's my guesses.
What?
I'm not judging. Like I could be an answer like
I'm pretty sure
Pretty sure.
this is mighty awkward.
Oh.
There's no homework today.
Oh really?
Yeah. We went over that in class.
Oh. Yeah, you're doing it. Why would you do that? It starts with the letter.
Guys, I got it.
No. Look at my now. Oh. Such a bad word. Where's the double notice?
Well, like for specifically the second one, I thought it was just about. Well, actually, because then after you get into like how food in general.
Yes. So it's a double letter.
It's not like double.
So you could say that
It's like-
for the
like
second
a
video,
repeating
but then like for like which video sticks to the issue.
My training here. Until at the end, you're like,
I don't know what the
Switch
issue
screens
is.
fast.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Really good.
Do you get your fried chicken?
I said I think the issues that I
Yeah, I only know one.
I said the first video only talked
And what was the really colorful thing that
about
one?
chemical effects
It was like the
of
same
foods,
country.
and the second video goes into detail on specific.
No, you had like a checkerboard thing of,
Oh,
So
and
I
so
think
she
the
said
second video is more detailed.
wow, it looked really cool. I was wondering how you got on there, and it's just, I never went to.
And it's good to know.
Oh, I
get it now. It's like,
You're so silly.
you're not supposed to.
Oh,
I don't know.
I just have to answer.
Okay.
This felt like it. I want the truth. For a bunch of tidbits. I'm blackmailing you.
What? Where at? You come up here. Go, 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 answer machine.
It's like baby shower colors.
Whoop.
I love how my computer's on the
We got sound.
Don't use bed
I didn't hear any sound.
Mine's are hot.
Does this thing have sound?
I worked hard to make the customer.
Oh yeah, this thing sounds
Honestly.
Okay, put away your laptops, get out your notes. We're gonna start with issues. Laptops away, please. Notes out. Okay, everybody got the notes out? Now, first example, this is the first example I found, probably because when I was searching for it, it's in the title of the city news. But you can look up any politician speak and find things like this. I just want to wait around and find it. Just watch. Just watch. Oh, you want to see what page we're on? Was that what it?
No, I want to know like what the title is. Like what are we?
Oh, yeah, we'll do that. So you do want to see the title of the page. So let's go back to. So next one's issues. And part of the assignment was you had to figure out what the issue was. Maybe this will help. So an issue is the question that's been raised. That might be what the argument then is about, the premise and the conclusion. And the overall arguments, you can have multiple arguments with premises and conclusions all leading up to a grand conclusion. But what is it they're talking about? And they are both sides talking about the same thing. Yes?
So issues turn into arguments?
They can. They're the topic under discussion. Now, whether or not they actually use you can have people using rhetoric, things that aren't arguments, still talking about it. You'll see that in debate. How many of you are in debate? Anybody here? In debate? Have you done the three things for an article or a speech in English then? Pathos, logos, and ethos? Has that ever been done? What is that for?
It's for like the structure of an argument.
Right. And what are some of those structures done in the arguments? Anyone know? Yeah, one of them?
Emotion.
Which one's emotion?
Ethos.
Yeah. And then do you have another one?
Logos is logic.
Logos is logic, and?
Ethos is like the credibility.
Yeah. And often goes like, is there a good reason to do this? I think of it almost like ethics, but it doesn't quite mean that. And so you can have lots of arguments arguments as I'm using the colloquial sense. In a logic sense, it needs a premise and a conclusion. But can someone be arguing with you and not using any premises or conclusions? Sure they can. House parents do it all the time. You've come in, you've just done something bad. I don't know. You were late to class. Sit down. Do you know how much your parents paid for you to be here?
Yes.
How disappointed are they going to be that you are not taking your learning seriously? What would your grandmother say if she saw you right now? Is that an argument? Some of you said, yeah.
It's leading to an argument.
It might be, but what is it really trying to do?
Cause an issue.
Well, there's a guilt trip there. It's trying to make you feel an emotion. That is a way of arguing in the colloquial sense, not in the logic sense, in which you just make someone feel enormous guilt, and then they do what you say. There's no real argument there. There's no premise. There's a conclusion, but there's no premise. There's nothing that naturally leads to that. They're not giving you a reason. They're just making you feel guilty. Yes?
Is it like they're trying to make a point, I guess? Or is it not really that?
You had a question. When it comes back, ask it to me. So, the larger point I'm trying to make, not all arguments, not all things you see, will they have an actual logical argument with a premise and conclusion. But you also see things where people are bringing up different issues. You know, throwing in a red herring into that and you know, saying something else. Why are you late to class? Mr. Neufeld, you're always picking on me. Is that addressing the point? Is that the same issue? No.
It's avoiding prosecution.
It's avoiding prosecution. And it's bringing up a red herring. Okay. We're going to see an example of that in... Where is it? I'll just click on it again. There we go.
A lot can change in 10 months. I'm wondering if you could share with us your thoughts on how you think Doug Ford has done as Premier of Ontario.
I believe that Justin Trudeau would like to run this next election against anybody except for me. He's constantly looking for other people to attack or to distract Canadians by focusing on other issues. This election is about Justin Trudeau or myself.
Respectfully, sir, you didn't answer my question. Can you share with us how you think Doug Ford has done as Premier of Ontario, please?
As I said, you know, whenever you have a government taking over 15 years of liberal scandals, liberal corruption, wasteful spending, higher taxes, people want to avoid that scenario at the federal level.
He didn't once mention the Premier.
Now, did he address the question in any way at all? No. And any politician, I've seen politicians like, you know, what are you going to do about the water in some Indigenous communities that's not drinkable? And then they talk about their spending in some unrelated Indigenous issue in another province in the federal government. It's like you didn't talk about the water issue, which was what they asked you about. And so it's a very, because if they bring up something that's distracting enough, then you stop remembering about the question. So politicians get fairly good at that.
He didn't say anything about, like, it wasn't even related to Doug.
No, it was not at all. But what was it related to?
Justin Trudeau.
And if you're in his party, what is likely your opinion on Justin Trudeau?
Reflective of the people here.
Pardon? They don't like him. And so if he brings up, well, this is all, they're going to fill in the blanks. If you wanted to connect Doug Ford to Justin Trudeau and that answer, and you filled in all the blanks, how would you do that? Well, he just said, you know, what is your opinion of Doug Ford? He said, the other side, Justin Trudeau, would like this to make this about that, but it's hard for someone who's like taking over after years of liberal corruption. He didn't actually give an argument, but he implied liberals are bad. He implied Doug Ford is improving without ever having to say it. And then he hadn't been, he can deny it right there. And in the eyes of supporters or ears of supporters, it's really easy to jump to conclusions where you hear someone you like saying something. You go, oh, he really stuck it to him. He brought it back to the real issues. Without ever asking the question. And regardless of which side you're on, it's useful to know when your own politicians are trying to avoid things. Being able to identify the actual issue and recognize when people are avoiding it then is important. And let's get rid of that for a moment. Now for that, what time does Wednesdays always take me by surprise? This ends at 10:35. So I am going to assign this. Anybody still ready?
Yes.
You're not writing every word, are you?
No.
The next one's just going to be another one of those little quizzes where you can go and practice and identify the issue. It will tell you answers as you go along, so that'll be next. But I'm not going to have you do it right away. We'll do it like maybe the last 10 minutes of class. Because the next one we're going to start on some bias and recognizing some actual logic. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Posting that next. And we want to look at this reasoning. This is an example of a premise conclusion. All dogs are animals. Some animals are not German Shepherds. Therefore, some dogs are not German Shepherds. Where's the conclusion? Yes?
Some dogs are not German Shepherds.
So some dogs are not German Shepherds. They gave us a huge hint with therefore. And you have to lay out the premise. This premise is not immediately jumping to that. And but it connects with this one to go there. So this is premise 1, premise 2. If we were to diagram this, oops. Again, not drawing well with this. P1, P2, conclusion. You need all of them to move into it. All dogs are animals. Some animals are not. True? Yeah. This is a type of argument known as deductive logic. If you agree with the premises, the conclusion should be inescapable. Some animals are not German Shepherds. True? Excellent. Therefore, some dogs are not German Shepherds. Okay? Good argument? Some of you are just vaguely nodding. Let's think about it. Hands up if you think this is a good argument. Hands up if you think it's a bad argument. Maybe. Why?
It just doesn't feel very, like, it doesn't seem strong. Like, it's not a strong argument.
Ooh. Strong and weak are used for inductive arguments where you like add points and it might still be wrong, but it gets stronger and stronger. Deductive arguments are valid or invalid. So they either are true or they're not. They're more like math. But you feel that there's something off on this. Okay? It is actually a terrible, terrible argument. If I said, so let's go back to here. Write this down as an and I'm going to translate it, and you can do both. All A's are B. Some B are not C. Therefore, some A are not C. Do these two premises connect A and C at any point? No, they mention it, but they don't connect it. This structure is used for the next argument. All German Shepherds are animals, so all A's are B. Some animals are not dogs. Therefore, some of A are not C. Exact same structure. But does the logic work? No. We just added different labels. This is actually, cleverly, I wasn't teaching you logic. You fell to the oldest scam in the book. Invading, no, never mind. This is more about a bias. There's a particular type of bias going on. What's the difference between this argument and that argument? Yeah, and what is different about that?
German Shepherds are dogs.
Thank you. So this is false. And you recognize that as false, right? Is this true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone didn't know anything about German Shepherds, might they accept that because those two things are true? Maybe. And you accepted the first one. Why did you accept this as a good argument?
Because all statements are true.
Yeah, all of these are true. That's true. That's true. So you accept the logic. And all I have to do, once you start accepting that logic, is start substituting other things. You'll start accepting all sorts of things. This is how balding, middle-aged, mediocre men who make podcasts get conspiracy theories out there. They're using often really bad logic. Sometimes all of the points they're making are true. They're unconnected in the way they're saying it, but they are true. And so you'll accept the larger point. Or you'll accept some other point because you're like, well, that's the same logic, that should work. And then you go down and down and down that particular pathway. Conspiracy theorists are just people who are fascinated with facts, and a lot of them turn out to be little true factoids that can add up to a larger thing that just turns out not to be true. If we use the same logic here, we can see that it's not true. It uses the exact same logic, but now we know that this is wrong. This is an example of belief bias. Giving weight to arguments whose conclusions we agree with. Because you agreed with the prior conclusion, you agreed with the premises. The logic must work. And this goes back to the politician. If you were now that was an old clip. He's no longer, I think, the head of anything. That was Scheer. I don't pay much attention to who's the head of things normally, so. Social studies was never my strong point in school. I thought Korea was next to Norway for a very long time. Geography was very bad, particularly. That's where all the peninsulas are, so naturally it made sense to me. It was only last year that I found out that colonel and colonel are the same frickin' word. I'd read colonel and knew it was a rank in the military, and heard colonel and knew it was a rank in the military, but I never had a chance to write it down and figure out that they were the same word. English is weird. And I'm the same person who's teaching you logic. So, belief bias. Giving weight to arguments you already agree with. So maybe you don't have it down. Ooh. What's that? Oh. So, well, actually, I'll wait. Let's open this one up. Come on, open. Oh, there you go. Anyway, you can start getting this down. This is a point about beliefs, which probably seems self-evident. Beliefs are not always grounded in logic or evidence that have been weighed objectively. These are known as cognitive biases. They're unconscious features of human psychology. Everybody has them. If someone says they don't have them, they probably have the most. Because if you're not looking for them, you're not going to be able to overcome them. I'm just going to, don't hold it, I can check what I have on the next page. panic when I start moving it. And people are still writing over by. You'd probably get me to panic forever. We'd never move on as long as someone just kept doing this. Yeah. There was a psychology professor at the University of Victoria that students almost got him teaching out the door. He was teaching them about behaviorism, B.F. Skinner, and that's just the idea that if you reward someone, they're more likely to do it again. And it's not just because they like it. There is a feedback process that will even happen unconsciously. So advertisements work in lots of things. So if you give someone a treat or something good, and you give them negative feedback or they do something bad, they're more likely to do the good thing, less likely to do the bad thing.
Is that
To
why
give it a very-
dogs always do the same thing?
Is that why?
Is that why like dogs always like follow the commands? Like,
Yeah, you've given them a treat. That's why that behaviorism is how you train them. One of the things they did discover, is how he started off, is that he had what they call the Skinner box, and he was doing some research on it, and it would feed pigeons, I think, a little pellet of food at regular times. It was just to feed them, and when they pecked at it, piece of food would drop down. It broke one day, so it wasn't feeding them, but it was dropping pellets at random times. And his grad assistant walked in and he found pigeons like doing this. And then they'd be like hopping on one foot, and another one would like have its head under its wing and going like this. And they're all doing this weird stuff. And what he found out is because it was dropping it at random times, if they happened to be going like this when the food dropped, the pigeon made the association, maybe what I was doing made it drop. And so what would they then do with that behavior?
continue to do it.
They continued to do it, and then the food would drop again randomly. And so then they would do it again, and then they developed these beliefs as pigeons about what they needed to do to make the food drop, even though it was happening randomly. You can think about superstitions and all sorts of things that humans do. When something happens and we happen to be doing something, we just make that correlation. That is responsible for so many things. Some negative stereotypes, biases. This one played all over the news during COVID and was just, it was perfect. Oh. First of all, we're not getting sound. And second of all, I just realized I may be copyright struck because I didn't blank it out for the last one. So I'm going to blank it so we can get sound. The headline is written by the editors to get clicks. The article is written by an actual journalist. So often the article will be completely unrelated to the title. The title just took one clip or something out of it. So there's one particular bias. I tried to find one that was like the opposite sort of bias. So like young people are behaving, irresponsibly. And then of course I saw this one: virus, coronavirus, COVID-19, boomer remover. So old people are all going to die off, and no way they're going to survive this. Woohoo! This is both of them are a form of ageism. A lot of biases we'll see play a part in stereotypes. And we'll go back to those notes maybe for a second, because I want some of these. Whereas there's plenty of stories if you wanted to go look for them would actually do the opposite of what the stereotype is. 103-year-old woman recovers from COVID. Older people were more at risk, but lots survived as well. And there's a couple of college students who created invisible hands. The elderly, of course, were more worried because they are more at risk. So they created a organization where all the young people of New York that were delivering groceries to older people for free, so that they could have food and they wouldn't have to leave and had less exposure to COVID. But this particular article or video isn't going to balance it with that, because it doesn't sell the same story. And so it creates the bias, but that bias might not have been as strong if you knew about some of these. So here's some actual notes. Number one, bias is a tendency to believe that some people, ideas, etc. are better than others, which often results in treating some people unfairly. And I wouldn't do that, ever. Just because you are uneducated about the shape of the earth, I will all treat you entirely normally. And we're not going to look too much at explicit bias. I think we all can recognize when that happens. Probably unlock this, given the number of people that keep locking themselves up. But obviously it exists. Attitudes and beliefs, positive or negative, that we consciously or deliberately hold and express about a person or group. Explicit and implicit biases can sometimes contradict each other. So you may have an explicit bias that goes opposite an implicit bias that you don't even know you have. We're going to define implicit bias in a moment. Yep.
What's an implicit bias?
So, I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah. Implicit bias includes attitudes, beliefs, positive or negative. A positive bias is still a bias. Way back when, before the existence of bank cards, the school used to have something called pocket money. And every week, students would line up, and we would hand them, if they were a junior, they would get $12. And if they were a senior, they would get $15. It was charged to the parents' account, and the parents would sign them up for it. But then you had a bit of weekly pocket money. Because most people didn't have banks that you could just go get money from a card, and so they needed a way to access money. Parents would sign them up for that. So there was a pocket money prefect who would be in charge of doling out the money. And one year, it was like, who's it going to be? And they say, it's going to be, should probably change his name, Kevin. And I said, why Kevin? And they said, because Kevin's Asian and he's good at math. And I'm like, what? Why would you say that? And they said, well, last year's pocket money prefect was Asian. I'm like, yeah. And the pocket money prefect before that was Asian. And they're all good at math. So it should be that. I'm like, but the one before that wasn't. Like, it's not like we just picked the nearest person that you think is good at math, and that's the person because of the pocket money. They're like, oh, we just thought that's how it worked. Just this year, the UK government has decided on all of its Navy ships, it's no longer going to employ Chinese people for its laundry services. On every British Navy warship, they hire only Chinese people They have a literal Chinese laundry because they're the best at doing laundry, apparently. I don't know. This is historical from, I'm not kidding. Is it because they're becoming more egalitarian and they recognize that this is somewhat racist holdover from their past? No, they just decided to switch to Sri Lankans. The world gets weirder every day. Yes.
What's the difference between explicit and implicit?
So, this one is conscious or deliberate. So you know you hold these. And these are outside of our conscious awareness.
So we don't.
We don't know. This is why it's important to educate people. Microaggressions are often results. Now, people can use microaggressions deliberately. They may be deliberately annoying you every day. But they also might have an implicit bias, and they're, they just
What's a
aren't aware of what they're doing. Pardon?
What's a microaggression?
A microaggression. Yes? Did you have an example? No? A microaggression would be something that someone does that perhaps you're not aware of, but deliberately points to something different, treats you a bit differently than others. So, for example, you meet someone for the first time, and you say, wow, that's right, you speak really good English. To someone who doesn't look like the dominant white pale culture, that's often a microaggression. They were born and raised there just like everybody else. They don't even speak a different language, but they get constantly asked because they look different. They're not asked, but they're complimented on their English. Or an older one that's probably not done as much because I think more people recognize it. You're really well educated for your kind.
Oh, what?
I had an uncle said that to someone I was present at about 10 years ago, I think. And he thought he was giving a compliment. Really? So, microaggression that he's not really aware that he's treating them differently. But definitely an aggression. And these things really add up over time. You get one microaggression doesn't seem like that much, but you get them from hundreds of people a day, that's a lot.
So they're basically just like backhanded compliments?
They don't have to be a backhanded compliment. They can just be small things that people do. At a meeting in which a person is talking about asking people's pronouns, introducing people, giving their pronouns, and then someone walks up and said, call me whatever, I don't understand what's going on these days, and rolls their eyes. It's a bit of a microaggression. They're saying it's not important, and they don't, they're not saying it's bad, but it's a little bit
disregarding the other.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do. I thought I may have come in with a bias that you knew a bit more about microaggressions than I thought. Admittedly, some of my biases, most of what I know about the youth comes from TikTok.
Then you should know we're not racist.
Some of them are amazing. Some of them, admittedly, I'm still worried that some of you might be eating laundry. That was entirely based on bias. Someone somewhere thought someone might eat a laundry pot, so then they put out a safety warning, and then it just became a meme. Can anybody think of a microaggression? Now that I've kind of explained it, give more examples, yes?
Somebody asked Alejandra the other day if she knew how to cook spaghetti, like specifically her. And we were like, why would you ask her? And he was like, well, she's European. Doesn't she know how to cook pasta better than everyone else? We were like, she's from Spain. Why would she know better than...
That's a good example of one. Yeah. Yes.
Last year when I was signing up for going into Harvard for the first time and I signed up for Mandarin, I was emailed by I don't remember the person, but he asked me if I knew any Mandarin beforehand because I was from Chinese heritage, but I have no idea.
You have no idea what Mandarin is. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So they're looking at it, they're making an assumption, and then they're doing it. And if you ask the person in both these cases, are you racist? What would they say? No, or culturist, or whatever you want to put the bias in. Yes?
People in the house ask me to help them cook rice or noodles.
I'd ask them for.
Hold it. Do you actually cook a lot of rice and noodles?
Yes.
Yeah, a few times.
Well, it might be that they just noticed that. No? It's people who generally don't know. Okay, that's fair. Any other ones?
No.
Anyone specific to houses? Notice teacher, yes?
There's a lot of like I guess biases that certain houses hold I guess less intelligent people than others, and maybe a bit weirder people than others. I'm not gonna say which is which.
I do wonder sometimes, because often I will, throw into a lecture. I've said not so many kind things about Ellis House. I would hope that they know that I'm joking, and that I'm going to mark everybody the same. But you would not be out of line to think that, hey, maybe the teachers are actually marking according to House. There in the hands.
When like I meet people for the first time and then they're like, oh, what house are you in? And then I tell them, they're like, and then they go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Every time. That's a microaggression, because they would clearly imply that might be an explicit bias too. I'm not entirely sure.
Is it a microaggression if like your teacher like mistakes you for someone else if you've known them for a long time?
Yeah, might be. Yeah. There's the blindness part where teachers get freaked out, like, I can't tell the two Asian students apart, so I'm never going to refer to them. All medium length, brown haired girls kind of look the same. And it's a bit of a microaggression if they're not bothering to get that straight.
Like last year I had a teacher, she called me like 4 other Asian guys' names in like 1 hour.
I'm just realizing we don't. I want to be able to start the other thing, and we've been streaming all this, so.